Hello, my name's Ed and I'm an account manager in the direct sales team for Carestream Dental in the UK. In my first video, which I will link below, we looked at how to add a base onto our intraoral scans ready for 3D printing using the tools built into CS ScanFlow, which is the new software for Carestream intraoral scanners. I was asked a few excellent questions in the comments to that video about how I orientated the model ready for 3D printing. So I wanted to cover that here in a video in case that information was helpful to anyone else. Secondly, in my previous video, it was pointed out that the base that I added to the model was quite large, which if you have a printer like mine with a smaller build plate can be an issue. So I wanted to go into a little more detail on the Adapt tab in ScanFlow to have a look at the other tools we have for editing the mesh to see if we can reduce the size of that base to save a bit more resin and to fit a little bit more onto our build plates.
So here we are back in my slicing software, and I have the model of my teeth from my previous video orientated so it's completely flat against the build plate. So let's talk a little bit why this is not necessarily the best way to orientate a model. The first reason we have for tilting our model or rotating it versus the build plate here is to improve the chances of a successful print. So the more we rotate this model and the more the angle is, you can see the less of a surface area you're going to have on each layer of your print. Now, the higher the surface area, the more suction forces you're going to have every time the build plate lowers and contacts the tank or the FEP. And obviously, the higher the suction, the more chance you have of your model being pulled away from the build plate and being left with a mess of cured resin at the bottom of the tank. So the second reason we have for rotating our model is that removing a model that's flat to the build plate can be very difficult. The model can be quite stuck, and that if you have to use some sort of scraper or spatula in order to remove it, you can damage the edges of your print. You can even shatter the print completely if you're having to sort of remove it with a lot of force. So by rotating the build plate, obviously this means we're going to be using supports. So if I add these on like so, what you can see here is obviously that removing the model from the supports is going to be a lot easier than if it was stuck straight to the build plate. My slicer as well allows you to add a base with a lip. I'm sure many other printers and softwares allow you to do something similar, which makes it very easy to then peel off the base as well once you've finished. So the third reason that rotating our model is a good idea is for drainage holes. If I lower down a few layers here, we can see that CS ScanFlow has added the base, and it's also hollowed the base out and added these drainage holes for us. Now, drainage holes are important. They let uncured resin drain out from your print as it's printing. They also allow the sort of suction pressure to be released. So every time your print lowers to the build plate, you're going to have less forces that, again, could pull your print away from the build plate and cause that mess of cured resin instead of a nice model when you come back. Now, some people have said, yes, you could put drainage holes in the side instead, and then you could put this flat on the build plate, but then you're left with a messy model with holes in the side rather than this nice finished product. So the last question I got asked after the last video was why not print vertically? Why only rotate by 10, 20 degrees? And actually the answer to that is that's absolutely fine. And in some cases, that might be the better way to print your models. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. So if I rotate this vertically, you can see that the first advantage here is that you can fit more on your build plate. So if I clone this model here, I can now fit two of these on rather than just the one. So if you do have multiple models to print and you can't fit more than one, or you need to fit more on your build plate, going vertically could be the best way to go. If I rotate round underneath here as well, you can see that there's much less of a surface area requiring supporting, so you can use fewer supports printing vertically. However, there are disadvantages of doing this way too. The first main disadvantage is print time. So the taller our prints are, because of the way these printers work, every layer has a predefined number of seconds in order to print it. So the taller our print is, the longer our print time is going to be. And lastly, this won't affect everyone, but it can happen. As prints branches come together, you can see that they have to join, and you can get print failures during this sort of merging process of different branches, and you won't get that to such a strong effect if printing to a shallower angle. So the second part of this video, we're going to look at how to reduce the size of the base that CS Scanflow is going to add onto our models. Hopefully save a bit of resin with a smaller model to print, and possibly also save some print time, so it's well worth doing. I have re-imported the same scan that we used on the previous video. It means we can compare our finished result. So let's get going. So the way Scanflow adds a model is by taking the sort of outermost points of the scan. You can see here there's a slope down from the teeth, and you can see there's a little curve here. It will then extend down from that point in order to incorporate all of the scan data into the finished result with the base. So what we need to do is we need to remove these areas so that the perimeter of the base is going to come inwards. So there's a couple of tools within Scanflow that I didn't cover previously that we can use to do this. One is this free cut tool, which is similar to other areas of the software. And by using this, you can draw lines round the area we want to remove, double click at the end, and you can see you can trim off parts of the model. The second tool we have is the plane cut. This will let you drop a plane down into our scan like so. And then when we click go, it's going to remove everything that was under that. And that's a really useful tool for getting a nice clean finish to the top and bottom of our scan. So back into my slicer here, I've imported both of our STLs, one with the mesh refinement and one without. The blue model here is the one without the mesh refinement, and you can see that we've got quite a considerable amount of base more on that one. So if I grab that and move it, you can see there's a lot there. That we didn't necessarily have to print. Similarly on the left and right, there's a little bit on the left and right. Every case is going to be different, but I think it's well worth just bearing in mind that trimming off that model before you add the base can save you that little bit of resin. So that concludes this second video. If it was helpful to you, please leave me a little like. If you can think of any other further videos that might be useful, again, just drop me a message. And if you think any of your other colleagues might benefit from anything in here, please do share. Thanks very much.